The world is not ending. It is revealing you. The world is not ending. It is revealing. It is revealing who has been living with an inner law and who has been surviving on borrowed certainty. It is revealing who has built a kingdom inside themselves and who has only been renting safety from the outer world. For years, maybe for your entire life, you were taught to look outside for stability. Get the right degree. Find the right job. Trust the system. Follow the rules. Save a little money. Avoid risk. Stay informed. Keep up with the world. Be reasonable. Be normal. And for a while that seemed to work. But then the ground began to move. The economy became unpredictable. Technology began rewriting entire industries. Attention became a marketplace. Fear became entertainment. News became a nervous system of collective anxiety. The future stopped feeling like a destination and started feeling like a storm. And in that storm, something ancient returned. A question. Not the question, how do I escape what is happening? But a deeper question. What part of me has been waiting for the outer world to give me permission to become powerful? Most people do not lose themselves when the world becomes uncertain. They discover that they were never truly anchored to begin with. Their peace was dependent on the market. Their confidence was dependent on approval. Their vision was dependent on conditions. Their focus was dependent on comfort. Their identity was dependent on the opinions, moods, and movements of forces outside themselves. And when those forces trembled, they trembled with them. But there has always been another path. It is not the path of blind optimism. It is not the path of pretending that chaos does not exist. It is not the path of sitting still, whispering weak affirmations and waiting for the universe to deliver a life you refuse to build. It is the path of law, inner law, mental law, spiritual law. The ancient Hermetic tradition did not view reality as a dead machine. It viewed reality as living order, a correspondence between the unseen and the seen, between mind and matter, between vibration and form, between cause and effect, between rhythm and timing, between the seed of an idea and the world it eventually becomes. The Kybalion is one modern doorway into this way of seeing. It presents 7 principles often described as the laws of Hermetic philosophy: mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. But this audiobook is not here to turn those principles into decoration. It is here to turn them into a protocol, a system for living with sovereignty when the outer world becomes unstable, a method for reclaiming your attention, your emotional state, your ability to act, your relationship with uncertainty, and your identity as the cause of your own next result. This is not a book about escaping reality. This is a book about becoming the kind of person reality must reorganize around. Not because you control everything. You do not. Not because pain never comes. It does. Not because the world will always be fair. It will not. But because there is a kind of human being who cannot be fully ruled by circumstances. A person who can stand in uncertainty without collapsing into panic. A person who can transform fear into focus, pressure into discipline, crisis into capital, and vision into execution. That person is not born. That person is built. And the building begins in the mind. Introduction: How to listen to this protocol. Before the first gate opens, understand how this book should be heard. Do not listen to it as entertainment. Do not listen to it as another idea to collect. The modern mind is addicted to accumulation. It gathers books, quotes, podcasts, courses, philosophies, rituals, and systems. It places them on the shelf of identity and says, I know this. But knowing is not transformation. A person can know the 7 principles and still live as a servant of fear. A person can quote ancient wisdom and still be ruled by the first notification of the morning. This protocol must be listened to as a mirror. When a chapter speaks about distraction, do not think of distracted people. Look for the place where your own attention has been sold. When a chapter speaks about blame, do not think of those who complain. Look for the quiet corner of your life where you have mistaken explanation for power. When a chapter speaks about vibration, do not imagine spiritual aesthetics. Look at the state you rehearse most often when no one is watching. When a chapter speaks about creation, do not think of what you want. Look at what your daily behavior proves you are actually committed to becoming. This is how the code opens, not through agreement, through confrontation. A true teaching does not flatter the old self. It interrupts it. It enters the places where you have built excuses, decorated them with intelligence, and called them truth. If a sentence makes you uncomfortable, pause there. Do not rush past it. Discomfort is often the sound of a locked door being touched. If a protocol sounds too simple, practice it before judging it. The ego loves complex theories because they allow postponement. The soul changes through repeated obedience to simple law. If a command affirmation feels false at first, do not abandon it. Let the words show you the distance between your current identity and the one being summoned. This book is not asking you to become perfect. It is asking you to become conscious. Conscious of what enters your mind. Conscious of the patterns you repeat, conscious of the states you feed, conscious of the poles you choose, conscious of the rhythms that pull you, conscious of the causes you plant, conscious of the visions you refuse to execute. There is no need to force belief. Work the principles. Test them in the body. Test them in the morning. Test them in conflict. Test them when fear arrives. Test them when the crowd becomes loud. Test them when you are tempted to return to the old identity because the old identity feels familiar. The purpose of this protocol is not to make you feel mystical for an hour. It is to give you a structure you can return to when the world attempts to scatter you. The world will not become quiet simply because you listen to a powerful book. The headlines will continue. The markets will move. The algorithms will call. People will misunderstand. Plans will fail. Emotions will swing. Old patterns will ask to be fed. But after this protocol, you will no longer be able to say that you were never shown the gate. You will know where the work begins. It begins with the mind. It begins with the next cause. It begins before the phone. It begins before the excuse. It begins before the world gets to define you. So listen as if receiving instruction from the part of yourself that has been waiting for you to stop being available to chaos. Because the deeper self does not beg for power. It remembers law, and then it obeys. Part I. The Collapse of Borrowed Cert. Chapter 1. The Outer Instability. There was a time when the modern promise sounded simple. Do what you are told. Work hard. Get credentials. Find a stable position. Build a reputation. Trust the institutions. Consume the right information. Stay connected. Keep up. If you follow the path will protect you. But something in that promise has cracked. You can feel it in the way people speak about the future. Not with confidence, but with tension. You can feel it in the way people scroll through headlines as if they are checking the weather of their own survival. You can feel it in the way young people wonder if the old rules still apply, and older people wonder if the world they prepared for has quietly disappeared. The age of outer certainty is ending, not because everything is destroyed, but because the old sources of certainty no longer carry the same spiritual authority. A job can vanish, a currency can weaken, a skill can become outdated, a social platform can change its rules. A market can turn, a public opinion can shift overnight, a machine can learn in a month what a person spent years being paid to do. And when this happens, the person who built no inner structure begins to search desperately for something to blame. The economy, the government, the algorithm, the boss, the parents, the market, the generation before them, the generation after them. And sometimes, yes, those forces matter. The outer world is real. Systems matter. Circumstances matter. Power structures matter. Not every person begins from the same place. Not every burden is chosen. But the central question of sovereignty is not, did I choose everything that happened? The central question is, what will I become now that it has happened? Because the most dangerous form of slavery is not always physical. Sometimes it is the invisible habit of waiting for the outside world to become safe before you become disciplined. Waiting for the economy to settle before you learn. Waiting for your emotions to calm before you act. Waiting for people to approve before you build. Waiting for perfect clarity before you begin. Waiting for the world to stop shaking before you develop roots. But the world does not wait for you to become ready. The world reveals what you have been rehearsing. If you rehearse distraction, uncertainty will expose distraction. If you rehearse fear, uncertainty will amplify fear. If you rehearse blame, uncertainty will give you endless material for blame. But if you rehearse inner command, uncertainty becomes a training ground. This is the first disruption. The collapse is not only external, it is internal. The collapse is the end of the illusion that your peace can be safely stored outside yourself. If your peace depends on the economy, then your peace was never yours. If your confidence depends on applause, then your confidence was never yours. If your identity depends on stability, then your identity was never yours. If your attention can be purchased by every notification, headline, conflict, and manufactured emergency, then your attention was never yours. The new age demands a different kind of human being. Not louder, not more frantic, not more informed in the shallow sense, more internally governed. A person who can look at chaos without becoming chaos. A person who can observe fear without being absorbed by fear. A person who can turn off the noise long enough to hear the command of their own deeper intelligence. The world will continue to change. That is not the tragedy. The tragedy is to remain the same while everything you depended on is being rewritten. This is why ancient principles return in unstable times. People do not seek deeper laws when shallow systems are working. They seek them when the old maps no longer explain the terrain. And right now, the terrain is shifting. You do not need panic. You need principle. You do not need more noise. You need order. You do not need to predict every event. You need to become the kind of person who can create under many conditions. That is the beginning of inner sovereignty. The moment you stop asking the outer world to guarantee your life and begin building a center that does not require permission. Pause here and ask yourself honestly, where have I been renting certainty? From a job? From a relationship? From a platform? From an identity? From a market? From an old version of the world that may never return? And what would happen if, instead of grieving the loss of borrowed certainty, you used this moment to build certainty from within? That is where this book begins. Not with comfort, with responsibility, not with denial, with awakening, not with escape, with law. Chapter 2: The Hidden Coup of the Sovereign Few. There are people who seem to move differently through uncertainty, not because their lives are free from difficulty, not because they never lose money, never experience rejection, never feel fear, never get betrayed, never face pressure. They do. But they do not interpret pressure the way most people interpret it. They do not treat every disruption as a command to panic. They do not confuse public emotion with private truth. They do not allow the rhythm of the crowd to become the rhythm of their nervous system. They have a code. Sometimes that code is religious, sometimes philosophical, sometimes strategic, sometimes inherited from a mentor, a family, a tradition, or a brutal period of life that forced them to develop an inner architecture. But in every case, the pattern is the same. They do not live randomly. They live by principles. A random person wakes up and receives the world. A sovereign person wakes up and defines the world they will receive. A random person opens the phone and allows strangers to enter their mind before their own soul has spoken. A sovereign person guards the first gate of consciousness. A random person reacts to the emotional weather of the crowd. A sovereign person observes the weather and chooses the work. A random person sees crisis and asks, "What is being taken from me?" A sovereign person sees crisis and asks, "What is being transferred, revealed, or made possible?" This is the hidden code of the sovereign few. They do not simply want a better life, they want a better operating system. This is where the Kybalion becomes useful, not as an ornament of occult philosophy, not as a mysterious book to quote in a dark room, not as a magical shortcut to avoid effort, but as a symbolic map of inner law. The 7 Hermetic principles are not merely ideas to admire, they are lenses, and each lens changes what you see. Mentalism tells you that mind is not passive. Mind shapes the field of experience. Correspondence tells you that the inner and outer worlds mirror each other in patterns. Vibration tells you that no state is fixed. Everything moves. Everything can be shifted. Polarity tells you that opposites are often the same force expressed at different degrees. Rhythm tells you that life moves in cycles, and the untrained mind is ruled by the swing of the pendulum. Cause and effect tells you that results are not random, even when the laws behind them are hidden. Gender tells you that creation requires union, vision and action, receptivity and direction, imagination and execution. 7 principles, 7 overrides, 7 ways to stop being programmed by chaos and begin operating from inner command. But understand this clearly. This book is not asking you to believe that you can control every event. That is childish spirituality. That is fantasy wearing sacred language. The deeper teaching is more demanding. You may not control every event, but you can control the quality of consciousness that meets the event. You may not control every market, but you can control whether fear makes you passive or disciplined. You may not control every person's opinion, but you can control whether their opinion becomes your identity. You may not control every storm, but you can build the kind of inner structure that does not collapse every time the weather changes. This is the distinction between manifestation as fantasy and manifestation as law. Fantasy says, "I want reality to change while I remain unchanged." Law says, "I will become the cause that makes a different reality inevitable." Fantasy asks the universe to obey desire. Law aligns identity, attention, emotion, thought, speech, and action until desire becomes direction. The sovereign person does not beg. The sovereign person aligns. This is why the code cannot be used by the lazy. It cannot be used by those who only want beautiful words. It cannot be used by people addicted to being rescued. It cannot be used by those who turn every obstacle into evidence of their permanent victimhood. The code requires a price. The price is your old identity. The part of you that needs the world to be easy. The part of you that needs everyone to understand. The part of you that waits until fear is gone before making a move. The part of you that consumes wisdom but refuses discipline. The part of you that wants transformation without transmutation. To transmute is not merely to think positively. It is to take the raw material of one state and raise it into another state by conscious force. Fear becomes focus. Pressure becomes power. Loneliness becomes depth. Rejection becomes refinement. Uncertainty becomes construction. This is Hermetic thinking applied to the modern soul. This is not a retreat from the world. It is a return to authorship. The question is no longer, what is the world doing to me? The question is, what principle am I living from as the world changes? Because reality does not obey the confused mind. Reality bends around the ordered one. The following 7 chapters are not lessons. They are protocols. Do not listen to them as information. Listen to them as instructions. Each one reveals a place where the modern world has trained you to surrender power. And each one gives you a way to take that power back. The first gate is the mind, because if your mind is not yours, nothing you build with it will truly belong to you. Part 2, The 7 Hermetic Avaritas, Chapter 3, Verse 1, Mentalism Reprogram the Mind Maker. Imagine waking up and allowing 1,000 strangers to walk into your bedroom before your feet touch the floor. One stranger tells you the economy is collapsing. Another tells you to be angry. Another tells you that you are falling behind. Another shows you someone richer, younger, more beautiful, more successful, more loved. Another sells you outrage. Another sells you fear. Another sells you a problem you did not know you had. Another tells you what to want. Another tells you who to hate. Another tells you what kind of person you should become. And within minutes, before you have breathed consciously, before you have chosen a thought, before you have remembered your own purpose, your mind is no longer a sanctuary. It is a marketplace. This is the modern violation of mentalism. The principle of mentalism says that mind is primary in the experience of reality. It does not mean that physical events are fake. It does not mean that consequences do not exist. It means that the world you experience is inseparable from the consciousness through which you experience it. Two people can enter the same situation and live in different realities. One sees humiliation. Another sees training. One sees rejection. Another sees redirection. One sees the end. Another sees raw material. One sees evidence that life is against them. Another sees a law they have not yet learned to work with. The event matters, but the mind interprets the event, organizes the event, stores the event, reacts to the event, and builds identity around the event. This is why your mind is sacred property, not inspirational property, sacred property. Because whatever enters your mind repeatedly begins to write the boundaries of what feels possible. If you consume fear every morning, fear becomes the atmosphere of your reality. If you consume outrage every day, conflict becomes the lens through which you interpret people. If you consume comparison constantly, your own life begins to feel like evidence of insufficiency. If you consume shallow stimulation without depth, silence begins to feel unbearable. And when silence feels unbearable, you can no longer hear the deeper command within you. The modern trap is not ignorance. The modern trap is uncontrolled input. Most people are not underinformed. They are overfed and underdirected. Their minds are swollen with fragments, opinions, predictions, arguments, images, and emotional signals that do not belong to their purpose. They call this staying updated. But much of the time, it is spiritual contamination dressed as awareness. Ask yourself, after an hour of scrolling, are you clearer or more scattered? After consuming the daily outrage, are you more capable or more reactive? After watching people perform success, beauty, wealth, and certainty, do you return to your own work with power? Or do you return with a subtle feeling that you are late to your own life? The mind is not designed to be an open sewer for the emotional waste of the world. It is a temple, it is a command center, it is a garden. And whatever you allow to be planted there will eventually grow roots. This is the first override. You must stop treating attention as casual. Attention is the first currency of manifestation. Before money moves, attention moves. Before action moves, attention moves. Before identity changes, attention moves. Before your outer life reorganizes, your attention must stop bleeding into everything that weakens you. The protocol is simple but not easy. It is called the information diet. For the first 60 minutes of the day, do not consume the world. No news, no social media, no email, no messages unless truly urgent, no algorithm, no public emotion, no digital invasion. Before the world enters you, you enter yourself. Sit for a moment. Breathe. Let the nervous system realize that it does not have to begin the day as a servant of emergencies. Then ask one question. What reality am I here to build today? Not what do I fear? Not what are they saying? Not what did I miss? What reality am I here to build today? Write one sentence. Today I protect my mind and create one cause that strengthens my future. This is not childish productivity. This is metaphysical hygiene. You are cleaning the gate through which reality enters your consciousness. Then choose your sources with severity. Not all information is food. Some information is poison. Some information is sugar. Some information is smoke. Some information is noise pretending to be knowledge. Choose no more than 3 primary sources of information that strengthen your skill, your strategy, your wisdom, or your spiritual discipline. Everything else must earn its place. When you encounter a piece of information, ask, does this make me stronger? Does this help me act? Does this clarify reality? Does this serve my purpose? Or does this merely make me anxious, angry, addicted, or distracted? If it weakens you and gives you no useful action, it is not information. It is energetic debt. Cut it. The untrained mind fears silence because silence reveals how much foreign material has been living inside it. At first, when you reduce the noise, you may feel restless. That is not a sign that the practice is failing. That is withdrawal. The nervous system has become accustomed to stimulation. The mind has become accustomed to being told what to think. Stay with it. A deeper layer will begin to return. You will notice your own thoughts again. You will notice which fears are yours and which were installed. You will notice which desires are authentic and which were advertised into you. you will notice that much of what you called reality was actually repetition. The same emotional inputs, the same anxious interpretations, the same reflexive stories, the same identity rehearsed through the same mental diet. Change the diet, and the internal weather begins to change. Change the internal weather, and different actions become available. Change the actions, and new evidence appears. This is how reality shifts. Not by pretending the world is mental in a shallow sense, but by recognizing that the mind is the instrument through which you meet, interpret, and command your world. You are not the software. You are the programmer. But only if you take back the keyboard. Command affirmation. I am the programmer of my mind. I do not allow fear, noise, or algorithmic chaos to write my reality. My attention is sacred property. My mind is not a marketplace. My mind is a temple of command. Remember this. The first act of mastery is not changing the world. It is refusing to let the world enter you unfiltered. Because when you change the input of the mind, you change the world the mind is capable of creating. Chapter 4. Correspondence build the empire. There is a strange arrogance in trying to repair the whole world while your own inner kingdom is in disorder. People speak with certainty about politics while they cannot govern their impulses. They condemn the economy while their own attention is bankrupt. They criticize systems while their own habits collapse under pressure. They want a peaceful life while feeding on conflict. They want wealth while thinking in scarcity, envy, and helplessness. They want love while carrying unexamined resentment into every room. They want destiny, but they have no daily structure. The principle of correspondence is one of the most powerful mirrors in Hermetic philosophy. As above, so below. As within, so without. This does not mean that every external problem is your fault. It does not mean that injustice is imaginary. It does not mean that the world is simply a projection of your private emotions. It means something more precise and more demanding. Patterns repeat across levels. The disorder you tolerate inside yourself will eventually seek expression outside yourself. The clarity you cultivate inside yourself will eventually seek expression outside yourself. The way you govern your attention becomes the way you govern your work. The way you handle your emotions becomes the way you handle conflict. The way you speak to yourself becomes the way you receive opportunity. The way you keep promises to yourself becomes the level of trust your future can place in you. The outer world is not always a simple mirror, but it is often a pattern field. It reveals the structures you have been living from. This is why trying to control the entire external world is exhausting. You cannot personally stabilize every market, every institution, every relationship, every technological change, every social conflict, every trend, every fear. But you can build an inner empire. And when the inner empire becomes strong, you move through the outer world differently. A person with no inner empire is easily colonized. Colonized by headlines, colonized by other people's moods, colonized by desire, colonized by fear, colonized by convenience, colonized by the need to be liked, colonized by every wave of uncertainty. But a person with an inner empire has borders. They know what enters. They know what is refused. They know what is sacred. They know what must be built. They know what cannot be negotiated. This is the second override. Stop trying to control the world before you have established government over yourself. The modern trap is blame disguised as intelligence. People often think that because their complaints are accurate, their complaints are powerful. But accurate complaint is still not construction. Yes, the economy may be unstable. Build skill. Yes, the job market may be changing. Build adaptability. Yes, society may be noisy. Build focus. Yes, people may misunderstand you. Build clarity. Yes, the world may be unfair. Build capacity. Your personal economy must become stronger than the public panic. What is your personal economy? It is the total value of what you can create, endure, perceive, and execute regardless of conditions. It has 4 forms of capital: skill capital, emotional capital, attention capital, spiritual capital. Skill capital is what you can do, the abilities you possess, the knowledge you can apply, the problems you can solve, the value you can create without needing perfect conditions. Emotional capital is what you can withstand without collapsing into self-sabotage. It is your ability to feel fear without obeying fear, to feel disappointment without becoming bitter, to feel pressure without becoming chaotic. Attention capital is your ability to place your mind on something and keep it there long enough to produce depth. In a distracted age, attention is not a soft virtue, it is a weapon. Spiritual capital is your relationship with principle. It is the degree to which your life is governed by law, meaning devotions, responsibility, and inner alignment rather than temporary impulse. Every morning, audit these 4 forms of capital. Ask, what skill am I strengthening today? What emotional reaction am I refusing to let rule me today? Where will I place my attention with reverence today? What principle will govern me today even when it is inconvenient? This is how inner architecture is built. Not in one emotional breakthrough, not in one inspiring morning, not in one beautiful journal entry, but through repeated alignment. A person becomes powerful when their inner world stops contradicting their stated desire. Many people say they want freedom, but their habits seek comfort. They say they want wealth, but their attention is scattered. They say they want love, but their nervous system is addicted to conflict. They say they want spiritual awakening, but they refuse the discipline of honesty. Correspondence exposes these contradictions. It does not shame you. It reveals where power is leaking. Think of your life as a city. If the city has no walls, anything enters. If the roads are broken, nothing moves efficiently. If the leaders are corrupt, the resources are wasted. If the citizens are undisciplined, the city decays. This city is your inner world. Your thoughts are the roads. Your habits are the laws. Your emotions are the weather. Your attention is the treasury. Your values are the throne. And your actions are the messengers sent into the outer world. If there is chaos on the throne, chaos will travel through the whole kingdom. So stop asking why the outer world feels unstable while the inner ruler is absent. Return to the throne. Here is the practice. Take one problem you have been blaming entirely on the outside world. Write it down honestly. Then ask, what inner structure may be allowing this outer problem to continue? Do not use this question to abuse yourself. Use it to retrieve power. For example, if the problem is financial instability, the inner structure may include avoidance, lack of skill, emotional spending, fear of visibility, or refusal to learn. If the problem is poor relationships, the inner structure may include weak boundaries, unspoken resentment, fear of abandonment, or choosing familiarity over truth. If the problem is lack of opportunity, the inner structure may include unclear communication, inconsistent effort, low courage, or waiting to be discovered instead of creating signal. The question is not, how am I guilty? The question is, where is my power still unemployed? Because power that is not used becomes pain. Command affirmation: I build order within. I strengthen my personal economy. I do not wait for the world to stabilize before becoming strong. I become the inner empire from which my outer life is rebuilt. The outer world will not always reflect your inner work immediately. Do not be childish about law. Seeds do not become forests overnight, but patterns accumulate. The person who strengthens skill, emotion, attention, and principle every day eventually becomes difficult to defeat. Not because nothing happens to them, but because everything that happens meets a more organized force. Do not wait for the world to become calm. Become the calm center through which a new world can be built. Chapter 5, Voice 3. Vibration raise the freaks of creation. Fear has a posture. You can see it before a person speaks. The shoulders collapse. The breath becomes shallow. The eyes narrow. The body wants to shrink. The voice loses weight. The mind begins to circle the same thought again and again, not to solve it, but to worship it. What if this happens? What if I lose? What if I am late? What if they judge me? What if everything falls apart? And the longer fear remains unchallenged, the more it becomes not just a thought, but an atmosphere. This is the principle of vibration. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. In practical terms, this means you are never truly standing still. Even when you think you are doing nothing, you are rehearsing a state. You are strengthening a pattern. You are teaching the body what kind of reality to expect. Anxiety is not merely something you feel. It is something you practice. Helplessness is not merely a belief. It is a frequency trained into the nervous system through repeated surrender. Confidence is not merely a personality trait. It is the memory of action stored in the body. Creation has a frequency. So does reaction. So does resentment. So does discipline. So does envy. So does devotion. So does despair. You know this because you have walked into rooms and felt the emotional weather before anyone explained it. You have met people whose presence lifted your energy and others whose presence drained it. You have had days when one decision made you feel larger, and days when one compromise made you feel smaller. The body knows vibration before the intellect names it. The modern trap is freeze. When uncertainty rises, many people do not fight or build. They freeze. They sit still, scroll, overthink, procrastinate, and call it processing. They wait for motivation. They wait for clarity. They wait until the fear goes away. But fear rarely leaves a motionless body. The body interprets stillness under threat as confirmation that danger is present. So the mind thinks more. The body freezes more. The energy sinks. The world feels heavier. And the person says, I can't act because I feel afraid. But the Hermetic reversal is this. You often do not act because you feel powerful. You feel powerful because you act. Movement changes state. Breath changes state. Posture changes state. Speech changes state. Environment changes state. Focus changes state. This is not shallow advice. It is spiritual mechanics. A state is not a prison unless you continue to feed it with the same signals. If you are anxious and you sit in the same position, breathe the same shallow breath, stare at the same screen, repeat the same internal story, and take no meaningful action, you are not waiting for the state to change. You are maintaining it. The third override is state management, not emotional denial, not pretending, not suppressing pain, but learning how to raise your energetic condition enough to create instead of collapse. Here is the protocol. When you feel yourself falling into fear, do not negotiate with the fear from the same position in which it captured you. Stand up immediately. Change height. Change breath. Change the body's relationship to space. Then take 10 deep breaths. Not delicate breaths, command breaths. Inhale as if you are pulling yourself back into your own body. Exhale as if you are expelling the foreign authority of fear. Then move. For 60 to 90 seconds, move with force. Walk fast. Do push-ups. Shake the body. Stretch aggressively. Climb stairs. Put on music that activates discipline, not nostalgia. Let the body know, we are not dying, we are entering creation mode. Then speak. Say a command out loud, not a wish. Not I hope things get better. Say I move before fear freezes me. I create one cause now. I return to command. Then do one action that can be completed in 5 minutes. Send the message. Open the document. Clean the workspace. Write the first paragraph. Make the call. Study the first page. Move one object. Take one step that produces evidence. Why 5 minutes? Because the fearful mind worships abstraction. It turns everything into a cloud. It thinks in catastrophes, futures, imagined judgments, and invisible threats. A 5-minute action breaks the spell by creating contact with physical reality. Now the mind has evidence. I moved. I acted. I am not frozen. This is how vibration is raised without lying to yourself. You do not say, I am fearless when you are afraid. You say, fear is present, but it is not the commander. You do not say, everything is perfect when it is not. You say, this moment contains energy and I will direct it. The alchemy of vibration is not about always feeling high. It is about refusing to let lower states become your identity. You may visit fear. You do not build a home there. You may feel grief. You do not hand grief the architecture of your entire future. You may feel uncertainty. You do not allow uncertainty to become spiritual paralysis. The creator learns to move energy. This is where manifestation becomes physical. Your desired reality is not reached only by thought. It is reached by states that make certain actions natural, repeated, and inevitable. A person in the frequency of victimhood asks, why is this happening to me? A person in the frequency of creation asks, what can be made from this energy? A person in resentment searches for proof of injury. A person in responsibility searches for leverage. A person in fear waits for permission. A person in command takes the first available step. This does not mean you should ignore genuine danger. It means you must distinguish danger from dysregulated imagination. Sometimes fear is a messenger. Often fear is an old program using new circumstances to remain in power. Your task is not to kill fear. Your task is to govern it. Command affirmation. I do not wait to feel powerful. I move, I breathe, I act, and power returns through motion. Fear may enter my field, but it does not command my frequency. I choose creation over reaction. If you remember nothing else from this chapter, remember this. A state that is not interrupted becomes a reality. Interrupt the state, change the breath, move the body, speak the command, take the action. Raise the frequency not by fantasy, but by force of alignment. A person who can manage their state cannot be fully managed by the chaos of the world. Chapter 6:4. Polarity turned crisis into capital. Most people see only one side of an event. They see a door close and call it loss. They see a market fall and call it disaster. They see rejection and call it humiliation. They see solitude and call it abandonment. They see pressure and call it punishment. But the Hermetic principle of polarity teaches that opposites are often the same thing in different degrees. Hot and cold are not separate realities. They are different degrees of temperature. Light and dark are different degrees of illumination. Fear and excitement can move through the same nervous system. Crisis and opportunity may be different degrees of disruption. The untrained mind freezes at the negative pole. The trained mind studies the whole axis. This is the fourth override. Do not let the first appearance of an event become its final meaning. The modern trap is to call crisis only loss. And sometimes there is loss. Be careful here. Do not become so addicted to spiritual reframing that you insult real pain. A person who loses a home, a relationship, a job, a loved one, or a sense of safety does not need shallow positivity. They need strength. They need time. They need honesty. But after the first wave of impact, there comes a sacred question. What else is present here? What is being revealed? What is being released? What is ending because it could not come with me into the next version of my life? What skill, courage, boundary, or form of intelligence is this crisis demanding that comfort never demanded? This is the alchemy of polarity. The event is lead, the interpretation is fire, the discipline is the vessel, the new power is the gold. To turn crisis into capital, you must learn to search for the hidden pole. Capital does not only mean money. Capital means usable value. A crisis can produce skill capital if it forces you to learn. It can produce emotional capital if it forces you to endure without collapsing. It can produce social capital if it reveals who is real and who is only present during easy times. It can produce spiritual capital if it removes illusions you were too comfortable to question. It can produce strategic capital if it shows where the world is moving before the crowd is ready to admit it. The crowd sees only pain because the crowd reacts from the surface. The alchemist studies movement. Where is attention moving? Where is trust collapsing? Where is demand rising? Where are old systems becoming weak? Where are new needs appearing? Where are people afraid to enter? Where is there silence because everyone has abandoned the field? This is not exploitation, this is perception. A crisis is often a transfer of energy. When one form breaks, energy does not vanish, it relocates. When one industry contracts, another may expand. When one identity dies, another may be born. When one plan fails, a deeper capacity may awaken. When one illusion collapses, reality becomes available. The person who only mourns the old form may miss the movement of the energy. The person who observes with discipline asks, "What is this becoming?" Here is the protocol. It is called the alchemical reframe. When you face a disruption, take out a notebook and answer 5 questions. First, what is ending? Name it clearly. Do not romanticize. Do not exaggerate. What form, phase, relationship, belief, habit, opportunity, or illusion is ending? Second, what is being released? Sometimes a crisis releases time. Sometimes it releases you from a false identity. Sometimes it releases you from dependence. Sometimes it releases hidden anger, truth, ambition, or grief. Sometimes it releases you from a path that was never truly yours. Third, who is panicking? Look at the crowd, look at your field, look at yourself. What emotion is dominating the collective reaction? Fear, greed, shame, confusion, desperation? Fourth, who is quietly building? In every disruption, there are people not making noise. They are studying, preparing, acquiring skill, observing gaps, strengthening position, building tools, creating value. Find them, learn how they see. Fifth, what is becoming cheaper, emptier, more necessary, or more valuable? This question trains your mind to see transfer. Maybe attention is becoming more expensive, so deep focus becomes rare. Maybe trust is collapsing, so integrity becomes valuable. Maybe automation is rising, so human judgment becomes more valuable in certain fields. Maybe people are lonely, so genuine community becomes precious. Maybe the world is drowning in content, so depth becomes premium. Maybe fear is increasing, so calm leadership becomes magnetic. This is how crisis becomes capital. Not by pretending it is easy, by refusing to see only one pole. Think of a person who loses a position they thought defined them. At the negative pole, they are rejected, humiliated, destabilized. At the other pole, they are freed from a structure that may have limited them. They are forced to confront dormant skills. They are given time that was previously consumed. They are stripped of an identity that was too small. They are invited painfully to become more self-directed. Both poles are real. The question is, which pole will become your command center? The crowd lives at the pole of reaction. The alchemist moves along the axis. This is the deeper meaning of transmutation. You do not deny the lower pole. You raise the degree. Fear becomes alertness. Alertness becomes preparation. Preparation becomes action. Action becomes evidence. Evidence becomes confidence. Confidence becomes new reality. Command affirmation. I transmute pressure into power. I turn fear into focus. I convert crisis into capital. I do not stop at the first appearance of an event. I search for the hidden pole of power. Remember this. The weak mind asks, why is this happening to me? The awakening mind asks, what is this showing me? The sovereign mind asks, what can I build from this? When the world turns lead into your hands, do not worship the lead. Find the fire, raise the degree, make gold. Chapter 7. Varied 5. Ride the pendulum without being ruled by it. At the crowd is a rhythm. At first it whispers, then it gathers, then it becomes a wave. Everyone is excited, everyone is afraid of missing out. Everyone is certain this opportunity will last forever. Everyone has reasons, charts, stories, testimonials, predictions. Then the pendulum reaches its height. And quietly, almost invisibly, it begins to swing back. The same crowd that was euphoric becomes nervous. The same voices that promised endless growth begin to explain why no one could have known. The same people who mocked caution begin to panic. Then the pendulum swings to the other side. Despair, exaggeration, fear. Nobody wants to touch what they were fighting to buy. Nobody believes in what they once worshipped. Nobody remembers that rhythm always returns. This happens in markets, it happens in culture, it happens in relationships, it happens in ambition. It happens in spiritual practice. It happens inside your own mind. The principle of rhythm says that everything flows in and out. Everything rises and falls. Everything advances and withdraws. The pendulum swings. The untrained person becomes the pendulum. The trained person observes the pendulum. That is the difference. Most people do not make decisions. They are made by rhythm. When the crowd is optimistic, they become optimistic. When the crowd is afraid, they become afraid. When everyone is rushing, they rush. When everyone is quitting, they quit. When their mood rises, they make promises. When their mood falls, they break them. They mistake temporary emotional weather for permanent truth. This is why rhythm is so dangerous. Because it does not always feel like manipulation. It feels like what everyone knows. It feels like common sense. It feels like the obvious thing to do. But common emotion is not always wisdom. Sometimes the crowd is not a source of intelligence. Sometimes the crowd is a nervous system without a soul. The fifth override is to learn the center point. You cannot stop the pendulum from swinging in the world. Trends will rise and fall. Markets will expand and contract. Relationships will warm and cool. Motivation will come and go. Energy will increase and decrease. Seasons will change. Your task is not to demand that life become a straight line. Your task is to stop attaching your identity to every swing. The center point is not passivity. It is not numbness. It is not being emotionless. It is the inner place from which you can observe movement without being possessed by it. Here is the protocol. It is called the pendulum observer method. Whenever you see a strong wave of public emotion or personal emotion, ask 5 questions. First, where is the pendulum right now? Is it at extreme excitement, extreme fear, extreme certainty, extreme despair, extreme urgency, extreme anger? Second, what emotion is ruling the crowd? Name it: greed, panic, envy, moral outrage, desire for belonging, fear of exclusion, fear of loss, hope of rescue. Third, am I being pulled? This question requires honesty. You may be intelligent and still be pulled. You may know the principle and still feel the swing. The point is not to pretend you are above human emotion. The point is to become conscious before you obey. Fourth, what would center do? Not fear, not excitement, not ego, not the need to prove. What would center do? Would center wait? Would center prepare? Would center study? Would center act quietly? Would center refuse? Would center build while others are distracted? Fifth, who benefits when the pendulum swings back? Every extreme creates its opposite. When people overexpand, those with reserves benefit. When people overpanic, those with vision benefit. When people overconsume noise, those with focus benefit. When people chase trends, those who build timeless value benefit. This is how you stop being hypnotized by rhythm. You begin to see the swing before the swing sees you. This principle is not only for markets or public trends, it is also for your inner life. There will be days when you feel powerful. Do not become arrogant. That is a swing. There will be days when you feel low. Do not become hopeless. That is a swing. There will be periods when your work expands. Use them. There will be periods when your energy contracts. Recover, refine, and prepare. There will be seasons of visibility. Serve them with discipline. There will be seasons of obscurity. Build roots in silence. The person who understands rhythm stops declaring every mood to be destiny. They do not say, I feel inspired, so now everything will change. They say, inspiration is a tide. Let me build structure while the tide is high. They do not say, I feel discouraged, so I must be failing. They say, discouragement is a tide. Let me keep one promise until it passes. This is spiritual maturity. To act from principle while emotion moves. To remain devoted while the inner weather changes. To not worship the high. To not identify with the low. A person who can only work when motivated is ruled by rhythm. A person who can only love when the feeling is intense is ruled by rhythm. A person who only believes when signs appear is ruled by rhythm. A sovereign person builds a covenant with their future that is stronger than the day's emotional tide. Command affirmation. I observe the rhythm. I do not become the rhythm. I move from center, not from panic. I do not chase the crowd at the top. I do not abandon my path at the bottom. The world will continue to swing. Let it. People will become euphoric. Let them. People will become afraid. Let them. People will rush into what they do not understand and flee from what they never studied. Let them. Your work is different. You are here to watch the pendulum, not become its prisoner. You are here to move when movement is wise, pause when pause is power, build when others are distracted, and remember that no swing lasts forever. The center is not a place you find once. It is a place you return to, again and again, until rhythm becomes not your master but your instrument. Chapter 8, 6 Cause and effect become the cause. There is a sentence that quietly destroys lives. It just happened. At first, it sounds innocent. The debt just happened. The relationship just fell apart. The opportunity just disappeared. The dream just faded. The body just weakened. The years just passed. The pattern just repeated. But very little in a human life just happens without causes moving beneath the surface. Some causes are visible. Some are hidden. Some are personal. Some are collective. Some are inherited. Some are chosen. Some were created by other people long before you had the power to understand them. But the principle of cause and effect says that every effect has a cause, and every cause produces an effect. What we call chance is often law we have not yet recognized. This principle can be frightening because it removes the narcotic of randomness. It asks you to stop floating. It asks you to look, not with shame, with precision. The modern trap is victim identity. This is delicate because real victims exist. People are harmed. People are betrayed. People are born into difficulty. People face injustice, loss, trauma, and obstacles they did not ask for. A wise person never uses responsibility as a weapon against the wounded. But a sovereign person also understands this. If you make victimhood your permanent identity, you give the wound the right to govern your future. There is a difference between acknowledging that you were harmed and building a throne for the harm inside your identity. There is a difference between saying, "This happened to me," and saying, "Because this happened, I can never become powerful." The first is truth. The second is a spell. Cause and effect breaks the spell by asking, what cause can I become now? You may not be the cause of the event, but you can become the cause of the next response. You may not be responsible for the wound, but you are responsible for what you build around it. You may not have chosen the beginning, but you can choose the pattern you stop repeating. This is not self-blame. This is self-reclamation. The sixth override is extreme ownership in its mature form, not the shallow version that says everything is your fault. That is crude. The deeper version says, my power begins where my responsibility begins. If I refuse all responsibility, I refuse all power. If I give every cause to the outside world, I give every future to the outside world. If I can identify one cause I can create, I have found the doorway back to authorship. Here is the protocol. It is called the cause reframe. When something goes wrong, write 3 sentences. Sentence 1, this is what happened. No drama, no exaggeration, no spiritual bypass, just facts. Sentence 2, this is the part I can take responsibility for, even if it is only 1%, even if it is simply how you respond. Even if it is the boundary you did not set, the skill you did not build, the signal you ignored, the help you did not ask for, the preparation you delayed, the pattern you tolerated, or the recovery you now must choose. Sentence 3, this is the new cause I will create today, not someday, today. A cause can be small and still be real. 1 call, 1 page, 1 apology, 1 workout, 1 boundary, 1 honest conversation, 1 hour of learning, 1 act of cleaning, 1 decision to stop feeding a pattern. This is how you escape the hypnotic field of helplessness. You do not need to control everything. You need to create 1 cause, then another, then another. Over time, causes compound. A person who reads 10 pages a day becomes different from a person who complains 10 minutes a day. A person who trains the body 3 times a week becomes different from a person who waits to feel motivated. A person who studies money becomes different from a person who fears it. A person who practices emotional restraint becomes different from a person who says everything they feel. A person who builds a skill in silence becomes different from a person who performs ambition without labor. The law does not care about your excuses, but it honors your causes. This is why the victim identity is so seductive. It gives emotional relief, it gives explanation, it gives community, it gives moral superiority. It lets you avoid the unbearable burden of asking, what must I change? But it also takes your future as payment. You cannot be both permanently powerless and fully creative. At some point you must choose. Do you want the comfort of a perfect excuse or the discomfort of new power? The world may owe you understanding, but your future requires action. The people who hurt you may deserve accountability, but your destiny cannot wait for their awakening. The system may be unfair, but your next cause still matters. Your past may explain the pattern, but your present either feeds it or interrupts it. Command affirmation. I am not merely the effect of the world. I become the cause of the next result. I take responsibility not to blame myself, but to retrieve my power. I create causes worthy of the reality I claim to desire. There is a moment in every awakening where the old self becomes offended. It says, but you do not understand what happened to me. And the higher self answers, I do, and I refuse to let it own what happens next. This is not cruelty. This is liberation. You are not asked to deny pain. You are asked to stop making pain your government. Cause and effect is the law of return. Plant confusion, harvest confusion. Plant avoidance, harvest stagnation. Plant envy, harvest bitterness. Plant discipline, harvest capacity. Plant study, harvest perception. Plant courage, harvest new evidence. Plant alignment, harvest power. Every day you are casting causes into the field. Some are conscious, most are not. The sovereign person makes them conscious. Before the day ends, ask, what cause did I create today that my future will thank me for? If you cannot answer, do not despair. Answer tomorrow with action. Become the cause. Chapter 9, Way 7. Gender unit vision and ecution creation is not born from force alone, and it is not born from imagination alone. It is born from union. This is the principle of gender. In Hermetic language, gender is not merely a statement about biological sex or social identity. It is a symbolic principle describing the generative polarity present in creation, the receptive and the projective, the inward and the outward, the womb and the seed, the vision and the blade, the silence that receives, and the action that forms. Every true creation requires both. A life without vision becomes mechanical. A life without execution becomes fantasy. The modern spiritual world often splits people into 2 incomplete paths. On one side is the cult of hustle. Work harder, sleep less, push more, dominate, grind, move, build, force, win. There is value in discipline. There is value in action. There is value in effort. But when action is disconnected from inner vision, it becomes spiritual violence against the self. People run fast in directions they never chose. They achieve goals that do not feed the soul. They build lives that impress strangers and exhaust the body. They become efficient servants of an unexamined desire. This is masculine energy without sacred direction. On the other side is the cult of passive manifestation. Visualize, affirm, wait, trust, feel abundant, ask the universe. Do not force, receive, imagine. There is value in stillness, there is value in receptivity. There is value in inner imagery, intuition, and emotional alignment. But when vision is disconnected from disciplined action, it becomes a beautiful prison. People dream vividly and act vaguely. They call avoidance surrender. They call fear of effort flow. They call inconsistency trusting divine timing. They wait for signs while ignoring the obvious instruction to begin. This is feminine energy without embodied form. The seventh override is the union. To manifest powerfully, you must learn to receive the vision and execute the vision. You must become quiet enough to know what wants to be born through you, and disciplined enough to build the conditions where it can survive. Every creation begins in the unseen. A book begins as a pulse. A business begins as a perception. A relationship begins as an opening. A new identity begins as a felt possibility. But the unseen must enter time. It must take form through decision, structure, repetition, sacrifice, and contact with reality. This is where many people fail. They love the vision before it demands discipline. They love the dream before it requires a schedule. They love the identity before it requires the death of old habits. They love the future self until the future self asks them to stop living like the past self. The creation union formula is simple. Vision plus execution. Intuition plus structure, receptivity plus direction, imagination plus evidence, stillness plus decisive movement. Here is the protocol. Choose one desire that matters, not a casual wish, not a borrowed fantasy. A desire that keeps returning even when you try to distract yourself from it. Write it at the top of a page, then divide the page into 2 columns. The first column is the inner womb. This is the receptive principle. Ask, what is the true image of this desire? Not the social media version, not the version that proves something to people. The true image. How does this reality feel in the body? What values does it express? What kind of person lives naturally inside this reality? What does my intuition keep pointing toward? What must be protected while this vision develops? The second column is the outer blade. This is the active principle. Ask, what must I do today? What must I cut away? What must I practice repeatedly? What must I measure? What promise must I keep when the feeling disappears? What physical evidence will prove that I am no longer merely imagining? This 2-column practice exposes false manifestation immediately. If you have vision but no blade, you are dreaming. If you have blade but no vision, you are forcing. If you have both, creation begins. Let us make it real. Suppose the desire is to build a new career. The inner womb asks, what work feels aligned with the intelligence I am here to develop? What kind of service feels alive? What problem do I feel drawn to solve? What identity must I inhabit? The outer blade asks, what skill must I study? What portfolio must I build? Who must I contact? What old entertainment must I reduce? What daily proof will I create? Suppose the desire is emotional healing. The inner womb asks, what kind of peace am I trying to become? What boundary does my intuition already know? What grief needs space? What truth have I been avoiding? The outer blade asks, what conversation must happen? What pattern must stop? What support must I seek? What practice must I repeat? What environment must change? Suppose the desire is spiritual awakening. The inner womb asks, what silence is calling me? What illusion am I ready to release? What deeper self is trying to emerge? The outer blade asks, when will I practice? What will I stop consuming? What discipline will make the insight livable? What act of service will ground the awakening? This is mature manifestation, not begging the universe, not bullying reality, but becoming a channel through which vision and discipline meet. Command affirmation. I receive the vision with stillness. I execute the vision with discipline. I do not worship effort without direction. I do not worship dreams without action. I create through union. The world is full of people who are half creative. Some have fire without form. Some have form without soul. The sovereign creator becomes whole. They listen deeply. Then they act cleanly. They imagine fully. Then they build physically. They honor timing. Then they keep promises. This is the final Hermetic override because it brings the others into embodiment. Mentalism gives the mind. Correspondence gives the mirror. Vibration gives the state. Polarity gives transformation. Rhythm gives timing. Cause and effect gives responsibility. Gender gives birth. The reality you desire must be conceived within you, protected by you, disciplined through you, and delivered into the world by your repeated action. Do not say you are manifesting if you are unwilling to become the vessel. The vision is not waiting for the universe to do your work. The vision is waiting for you to become unified enough to carry it. Part 3, the 15-minute Ori's Ritual, Chapter 10. The morning sovereignty procula day is most vulnerable at its beginning. Before your defenses are awake, before your purpose has been remembered, before your mind has been claimed. This is when the world tries to enter. The phone waits beside the bed like a portal. Messages, news, demands, images, other people's urgency, other people's victories, other people's opinions, other people's fear. And if you are not careful, the first state of the day will not be chosen by your soul. It will be assigned by the world. This is why morning is not merely a time. It is a gate. Whoever owns the first gate often influences the entire kingdom. The morning sovereignty protocol is 15 minutes, not because 15 minutes is magical, but because it is realistic. A practice that is too complicated becomes another fantasy. A practice that is simple enough to repeat becomes a law. These 15 minutes are designed to activate all 7 hermetic overrides before the world begins to pull at you. Minute 0 to 3, cut the feed, no phone, no news, no social media, no email, no external input. For 3 minutes, let the nervous system understand that it does not begin the day as property of the outer world. Sit up, place both feet on the ground. Breathe slowly. Say, before the world enters me, I enter myself. This sentence matters. It reverses the modern order. Most people let the world enter them first. Then they spend the rest of the day trying to recover. You are reversing the gate. You are declaring that consciousness comes before consumption. Minute 3 to 6. Command the mind. Speak 3 affirmations slowly, not as wishes, not as decorations, as commands. First, I am the keeper of my attention. Pause. Second, I create order before I consume noise. Pause. Third, I become the cause of my next result. Pause. Now speak them again, but with the body involved. Sit taller. Let the breath deepen. Let the voice carry weight. The nervous system must learn that these words are not poetry. They are orders from the throne. Minute 6 to 10. Design the cause. Take a notebook. Write 1 result you want today, not 20. 1. Something meaningful. Maybe you want to complete a task. Maybe you want to remain calm in a difficult conversation. Maybe you want to study. Maybe you want to create. Maybe you want to stop avoiding a responsibility. Write the result. Then write the cause you will create. For example, result, I want clarity in my work. Cause, I will complete the most important task before opening social media. Result, I want more opportunity. Cause, I will send 3 honest proposals and improve 1 skill for 30 minutes. Result, I want emotional stability. Cause, I will pause before reacting and take a walk when my body begins to contract. Result, I want spiritual alignment. Cause, I will protect 1 hour from noise and use it for study, prayer, meditation, or writing. This step activates cause and effect. You are not waiting for the day to become good. You are planning a cause. Minute 10 to 13. Enter the state. Stand up, breathe deeply, move, stretch, walk, shake the body, do push-ups if you can, open the chest, relax the jaw, wake the spine. The body must be informed that the day is not happening to you, you are entering it. This step activates vibration. It changes the state before the state becomes destiny. As you move, say, I move before fear freezes me. I create from command. I bring order into this day. Minute 13 to 15. 1 decisive act. Do not end the ritual with a feeling. End it with evidence. Take 1 small action immediately. Open the work document. Write the first sentence. Put on the shoes. Send the message. Clear the desk. Start the lesson. Prepare the tool. Make the first move. The action can be small, but it must be real. Why? Because without evidence, the mind may turn the ritual into another performance of spirituality. Evidence makes the command physical. This is the difference between fantasy and protocol. The ritual is complete when the inner world has produced an outer act. 15 minutes. Cut the feed, command the mind, design the cause, enter the state, take 1 decisive act. This is not complicated, but if practiced daily, it becomes an inner constitution. You begin the day by living the 7 laws. Mentalism, you protect the mind. Correspondence, you build inner order before outer engagement. Vibration, you raise the state through breath and movement. Polarity, you turn morning resistance into creative energy. Rhythm, you establish center before the day's pendulum swings. Cause and effect, you plant a conscious cause. Gender, you receive vision and execute action. A person who begins the day this way is not guaranteed an easy life, but they are much harder to possess. They are not as easily colonized by fear. They are not as easily scattered by noise. They are not as easily reduced to reaction. The world can still come, but it does not find an empty throne. It finds someone seated there. Chapter 11. Command affirmations for sovereignty. Affirmations are often weak because they are spoken from weakness. A person whispers, I am abundant, while behaving as if life is a threat. They say, I am powerful, while avoiding every action that would require power. They say, the universe supports me, while refusing to support themselves with discipline. Words alone do not transform reality. Words become powerful when they are aligned with identity, emotion, posture, attention, and repeated action. A command affirmation is not a wish. It is not a plea. It is not an attempt to trick the universe. It is a conscious instruction issued to the mind, the body, and the field of behavior. The words must become law. They must be spoken as if the old self has been removed from the throne. Use the following affirmations not as decoration, but as weapons of alignment. For the mind, I do not outsource my mind to fear. I do not let the noise of the world become the law of my inner kingdom. My attention is sacred property. I decide what enters my consciousness. I create order before I consume information. I think from principle, not panic. For the emotional state, I move before fear freezes me. I command my state through breath, posture, focus, and action. My energy rises when I choose creation over reaction. I do not make permanent decisions from temporary emotional storms. I can feel fear without giving fear authority. I return to center before I respond for crisis. I transmute pressure into power. I turn uncertainty into preparation. I turn disruption into perception. I turn rejection into refinement. I turn silence into depth. I build while others panic. For rhythm, I observe the pendulum. I do not chase the crowd at the top. I do not abandon myself at the bottom. I trust cycles without becoming passive. I move from center. I do not confuse public emotion with private law. For cause and effect, I become the cause. I plant actions my future can harvest. I do not worship excuses. I do not use pain as permission to remain powerless. I retrieve my energy from blame. I create one cause now. For manifestation, I do not beg the universe. I align with law. I hold the vision and execute the work. I become the kind of person my desired reality requires. I receive the image in stillness. I deliver the image through discipline. For inner sovereignty, I am not waiting to be rescued. I am not owned by chaos. I am not ruled by algorithms, headlines, or the emotional weather of the crowd. I carry order inside myself. I am the keeper of my attention, the governor of my state, the author of my next cause. Use these in the morning. Use them when fear rises. Use them before important work. Use them when you are tempted to return to the old identity. But remember, an affirmation without action becomes self-hypnosis. An affirmation with action becomes identity training. After every command, ask, what physical proof can I create now? If you say, I am the keeper of my attention, then close the app. If you say, I build while others panic, then study, write, create, or prepare. If you say, I become the cause, then take the action you have been avoiding. The universe does not need your performance. Your nervous system needs evidence. Your identity needs repetition. Your future needs causes. Speak the command, then embody it. Again, until the words stop being something you say and become the law by which you are known to yourself. Part 4. The Sovereign Call, Chapter 12. The code is now yours. You have been given the 7 gates. The first gate is mentalism. Guard the mind. Do not let fear, noise, and algorithmic chaos write the first lines of your reality. The second gate is correspondence. Build the inner empire. Do not demand outer order while tolerating inner disorder. The third gate is vibration. Manage the state. Do not wait to feel powerful before you move. Move and let power return through motion. The fourth gate is polarity. Transmute the crisis. Do not stop at the first appearance of loss. Search the axis until you find the hidden pole of power. The fifth gate is rhythm. Observe the pendulum. Do not become the mood of the crowd. Stand at center and move from law. The sixth gate is cause and effect. Become the cause. Do not turn pain into permanent government. Create the next action that your future can harvest. The seventh gate is gender. Unite vision and execution. Do not dream without discipline. Do not work without soul. Receive the image and build the form. Together, these are not just concepts. They are a way of being. A person who lives by them becomes less available to manipulation, less available to panic, less available to victimhood, less available to meaningless distraction, less available to the invisible forces that feed on a scattered mind. This does not mean life becomes easy. Do not ask for easy. Easy is not the highest blessing. Ask for law. Ask for strength. Ask for clear vision. Ask for the discipline to become the answer you once waited for. The world does not need more people waiting to be saved. It needs sovereign builders, men and women who can carry order inside themselves while the outer world trembles. People who can turn off the noise and hear the command. People who can see through the crowd's hypnosis. People who can build in silence. People who can create while others complain. People who can feel fear and still plant causes. People who can receive a vision and pay the price to embody it. This is the real meaning of mastering reality. Not controlling every event, not avoiding every storm, not forcing the universe to obey the ego, but becoming so aligned, so ordered, so responsible, so inwardly governed that wherever you stand, a new pattern begins. Start tomorrow morning. Do not begin with a grand promise. Begin with 15 minutes. Cut the feed. Command the mind. Design the cause. Enter the state. Take one decisive act. Then repeat. The code is no longer hidden behind mystery. It is hidden behind discipline. It is hidden behind the simple things people refuse to do. Protect your mind. Build your inner empire. Raise your state. Transmute pressure. Observe rhythm. Become cause. Unite vision with execution. And when the world becomes loud, remember, noise is not law. Fear is not prophecy. The crowd is not destiny. Your past is not the final author. Uncertainty is not a command to collapse. It is an invitation to become internally sovereign. The code is now yours. The question is no longer whether reality can change. Reality changes constantly. The question is whether you are willing to become conscious enough, disciplined enough, and unified enough to change with law. Turn off the noise, return to the throne, plant the cause, build the form, and let the world discover what happens when a human being stops begging for rescue and begins creating from command. The code is no longer hidden. The gate is open. Begin.